Welcome back to another 2020 Kentucky Derby profile here on the Racing Rundown. I'm Eric DeCoster. In this edition, we will be discussing South Bend, a very, very late addition to this year's Derby field. As about a half hour before the draw, it was announced that South Bend would be running. I don't know if this was planned the entire time. There isn't really a lot about it. I'm recording this pretty much right after the draw, so I mean, obviously, there's a lot of not necessarily questions. I think he kind of fits in this particular Kentucky Derby, but nevertheless, a surprising last-minute entry. So we will discuss him. 12 career starts. He is the most heavily raced horse in this year's Derby now, with 3 wins, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. And I think one of the bigger things about this horse, 2 of his 3 career wins have come at Churchill Downs. He broke his maiden here, 3rd career start, won the Street Sense Stakes here. We'll talk about that race a little bit. And then his 4th run on the Churchill Downs Dirt was in the Kentucky Jockey Club, where he was 6th behind a couple horses that are in this year's Derby. He has ran at Churchill Downs once this year on the grass. He actually had a long streak of grass races, about 5 in a row, up at Gulfstream, and then or 4 at Gulfstream, 1 at Churchill Downs for 5 turf races in a row before switching back to the dirt for the Ohio Derby and then the Travers last time out. We'll go in depth though on this horse. Like I said, he broke his maiden at Churchill Downs last fall. Pretty solid effort there. Pretty nice win. Beat some good horses in the process. A couple of the horses in behind him have gone on to run in stakes or become nice winners on the grass and stuff. So beat a good group there. Followed that up with an allowance win at Keeneland. And then the win in the Street Sense was extremely impressive. A very nice win there for this colt over the track. And he beat some stakes winners in that field. He beat Fighting Stevie, who was good on the grass, but even further back, Fighting Stevie was 2nd, but then you have horses like Silver Prospector, Kentucky Jockey Club winner. Shotsky won the Remsen. Sproul was very competitive in some Derby preps earlier in the year. All the way back to last, Tap It to Win was at single digits in the Belmont in June. So he beat a very strong group in that Street Sense, came back in the Kentucky Jockey Club, finished 6th. He was pretty close to a pace that was not fast, but the speed did kind of back up in that race. So I don't know if that was a factor. My best guess is it was the sloppy track that got the best of him. Well, he went down Gulfstream, lost the Mucho Macho Man Stakes, ran in those 5 grass races, a couple placings, no success though. Then he switched back to the dirt though in the Ohio Derby. Was well bet on the day. I believe he went off 3rd choice in the Ohio Derby. Closed from well off the pace into early fractions that did not set up well for him. Beaten 3/4 of a length, but he was finishing the best. He might have been the best horse in the race that day. I really liked him coming out of it. Ran a huge run from way off the pace in that race, and the speed didn't really back up there a whole lot. So obviously he had his excuses there in addition to having going very wide in closing. Then out of that race, he was privately purchased by Belmont. Belmont picked up the training job for owners Gary Barber, Wachtel Stable, Peter Deutsch, Pantapel Stable. They've all owned a lot of good horses in partnership with each other. Separately, a lot of those owners, I believe, I don't know if all of them are in on Channel Maker, but Channel Maker, who won the Sword Dancer last week in a Grade 1 there. So obviously high-level connections, bought this horse and decided to point to the Travers. And I don't think he really disgraced himself in that race. He was the 2nd longest shot of the board at 32-1. Jose Ortiz, he was well off the pace. He was last for the majority of the race, and the pace was very slow. I mean, 48-1 for that half mile. Almost 112 for 3/4. It was very slow pace, and obviously that's not going to benefit a horse that needs some excuses from the other horses to win. And obviously we know what Tiz the Law did. Caro until he got injured was very highly regarded. Max Player is a live long shot in this year's Derby. And South Bend was 4th in that race, and he was really only beaten 4 lengths by Caro and 2 lengths by Max Player, and he was finishing strongly. While the pace wasn't beneficial, he was finishing strongly, and that was at 1.25 miles. So I know he can do it. And considering that this year's Derby pace is expected to be kind of quick, he is a little interesting. I don't totally discount him to pick up some of the pieces underneath. I mean, there's some other closers in this year's Derby field who truly just on talent alone have no chance. And I'm talking about horses like Winning Impression and probably Finnick the Fierce, Mr. Big News, who is obviously a late addition as well. Those horses really need a lot to go their way to run big. He at least is someone to consider with a pace meltdown to finish off some exotics. We know how the Derby usually is with these long shots that come in at big prices and blow up the tote board underneath. Country House did it last year. You go back 2 years ago, horses like Instilled Regard finished 4th. Even 3 years ago, looking at Lee, Battle of Midway, 2nd and 3rd, both very long on the odds board, but because the race just kind of set up for them, they were able to put in a big run. And I would not put it past South Bend to run that kind of race. Obviously, biggest concern is he hasn't won since last fall. He was overmatched in the Travers, nevertheless, even though it wasn't a horrible race. And in all of his dirt races, really, he's kind of he's never really been their Kentucky Jockey Club last year behind Tiz the Law, Finnick the Fierce, both in this year's Derby. He wasn't really impressive there, but that I wouldn't put too much weight into that race, considering he already has 2 other wins at Churchill Downs over fast tracks, and we know that this year's Derby is more than likely going to be run over a fast track, barring any unforeseen rain. So I don't think he's a bad horse at all. I think that I don't think he's going to run last unless he's really just trending poorly into the race. But I don't think Belmont and the connections would have ran South Bend if they thought he had no chance in here to at least pick up some late money. So we'll see. He's going to be a long shot nevertheless. I think, though, if you really draw a line through all the grass races and you purely focus on the dirt races, he doesn't fit in with the top horses in this year's Derby, but he makes just a little bit of sense to finish off the job underneath. We will see, though. Tyler Gaffalione did pick up the mount after he lost a Derby mount when Dr. Post defected. So Tyler Gaffalione does get back in the Derby this year, and so does Belmont, who's going to look to go back-to-back in the Kentucky Derby. That's kind of weird to say considering all the circumstances from last year. But that's all I have for you guys on this Derby profile. We'll have a lot more Derby coverage coming up this week, a full Derby preview, and some other graded stakes to cover. So it's going to be a good week. Please stay tuned and keep your eyes out for those. Please subscribe if you're willing to, and we will see you next time here on the Racing Rundown.